And we're alive.
Great. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us here in person or on Zoom. I think we will start tonight by approving last month's minutes from April 23rd. They've been circulated and I think everybody's had a chance to take a look. So I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, excellent. John, we start with you.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. I was not here.
you were not here. So 3 is enough and they are approved. So thank you. And we'll start with our first case, which is Irvington Place Property LLC. It's the continued matter on tonight's agenda. Do we have somebody on that? Super, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board and staff. Brad Schwartz from Zarin Steinmetz representing the applicant. Our clients, Gail and Rich Weiler, are also on the screen tonight, and John Malone, the project architect, is here as well. It's good to see you all. We were retained, Madam Chair, following the board's April meeting. We made a submission on May 6th. At the time, the April meeting had not yet been posted. I've since had a chance to watch the video of that meeting. So I'm well aware that the consensus of the board last month seemed to be heading toward a conclusion that this application requires a use variance. As I gather you all could tell from my submission, we respectfully disagree. And I would ask to indulge in a short presentation tonight so I can walk you through our rationale. And our hope is that upon some further reconsideration of our points, that the board may see it differently and hopefully in our favor.
Great, thank you. Go ahead. That would be terrific.
All right. So have a short slide deck. We can skip right past the title page. So just to back up, and I assume you're all familiar, but just to make sure, this is the property. So it looks like a quintessential residential building. In fact, that's how it's been used historically for decades. It was 6 units, 2 on each floor. And then when our clients purchased the property in 2000, they converted the ground floor, again, where there were 2 dwelling units, to a dental office for Mr. Weiler's practice. And they further reduced the density on the top 2 floors from 2 units to 1 unit each. So today there's 1 unit on each of the top 2 floors. And this application seeks to put back the same residential dwelling use on the ground floor that had existed historically. The next slide simply just sort of zooms out so you all see the residential character of this stretch of Main Street. That's our client's building right in the middle. The Village's building attached to the library with affordable housing is to the west, and another residential building is to the east. So again, it's one photo, but it gives you the sense of the residential character of this area of southern Main Street.
So Brad, the affordable housing though that you're referring to is above the first floor.
So my understanding is it's ground floor, but maybe I'm stand corrected.
The library is on the ground floor.
Mm-hmm.
John, do you have different data on that?
I think the building that Brad's referring to is the westernmost portion of the Burnham building right there. So there is second level residential on the above the library section, which is to the right of that. But that portion of the Burnham project is ground floor residential. Do you see
But
that?
he referred to it as the affordable housing, and that's above the library. I don't know what's in the other building, but the affordable housing is above the library.
Yeah, I think there's a few affordable units in this piece too. I think it's just some of the whole project is affordable, but I think that there's a few affordable units in that section that Brad has his cursor on as well.
And okay, so and we'll get into a zoning analysis on the next slide that shows even irrespective of that building, there's certainly a predominance of residential, including ground floor resi in the area. But just to back up for a moment, so this project, this proposal seeks, again, ground floor resi a modest 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit that's cost friendly and frankly really good for seniors, given the elevator lift in the back. And as John mentioned and emphasized during the last meeting, no exterior changes to the building or changes to building footprint. This is an entirely interior renovation to accommodate the residential dwelling. This is the zoning analysis that John's office conducted, and he walked you through last month. And what he found is that there are 11 nearby properties, and those contain the letters on this map, and here are the photos reflecting 11 nearby properties that contain dwelling units, 11 of which are on the ground floor. Now, I don't have the historical background as to how each of those were permitted. I gather many, if not all, were prior lawful non-conforming. But the takeaway from my perspective, from a planning standpoint, again, it shows the residential character, including ground floor dwelling in this area of Main Street. So the provision that's at issue is before us. And as you all pointed out correctly last meeting, this is the use section of the Business B district regulations. And when we scroll down to number 15, a residential dwelling unit is clearly and expressly a permitted use in this district, subject to a few conditions or requirements. Two of them, again, are at issue in this application. The first one is density. I think we could all agree that density is an area variance. I'm going to put that one off to the side for now and focus on the letter B condition, location. And that is, again, residential second floor and above first floor, ground, retail, personal service, or office. So this application right now and our request for an interpretation is all about what type of variance is required from this locational requirement. Before we get into the answer on that, I just want to remind everyone the definitions of area and use variances under New York State village law. An area variance is relief from dimensional or physical requirements. We're all familiar with the standard area variance application, whether it be height, setback, coverage, lot area, pretty much all the other applications on your agenda this evening. And the Court of Appeals has said long ago, an area variance does not change the essential character of the zone district. In contrast, a use variance allows the use of land for something that's not otherwise permitted or allowed. So if a use is prohibited, that requires a use variance. So, and that's a good segue into why we maintain this is an area variance application, because again—
Well, before we go there, right?
Sure.
So we're in a section of the zoning code called the business district, right?
Yep.
In addition to use variance, it's the business district. So the residential character of the surrounding buildings seems to me to be subordinate to the classification of these portions of the code to the intent of the village to have a business district, right? On top of which, the problem that you're citing, right, and the variances that you're looking for are self-created.
So if we go to the code, bear with me for a moment. Sorry. So here's the code. All right, so this is in the Business B district, these are the use regulations. So there's all these various, and frankly, a mix of uses that are allowed by the village in this district. Residential being one of them. So I
Right.
get that the
Residential
name
is-
of the district is called business, but an express use embedded within the business district is a dwelling unit, subject only to these conditions. And we're seeking a variance from two of those conditions. And as I was going to touch upon later, this to me, frankly, feels and reads like a special permit, right? And special permits are allowed in a district with conditions. And you're allowed to seek area variances from special permit conditions. And the Court of Appeals held that in the Real Holding case back in 2004, I'm sorry. So I bring the code up so you can see there's a whole lot of uses allowed in a business district. Short-term rentals are
But
allowed.
they're
Of course, on the
Right.
second floor
ab-
above retail.
Retail
So, but, right,
or other commercial use.
Right.
but the residential use itself is permitted, and a use variance, in my view, is when there's a fundamental or sweeping change in the use that's allowed on the property. In this case, the residential use is allowed on the site. It's allowed in the four corners of my client's property. The question is, where on the site is it located? And I would analogize this to a setback variance. Take a residential site. You have a building envelope that's created by your setbacks. You have to offset your rear, side, and front yard setbacks, and you know the envelope within which you could build your home. If you wanted to extend your home or build a portion of it within the setback, again, the residential house is allowed, but it's not allowed in that area of the site. And if you want relief from that prohibition, you seek an area variance. I don't think it's any
Yeah,
different
I
here.
I
when we're
don't think I'm buying that analogy, actually, Brad. But look, a setback is entirely different. It's just sort of where and within a property you can start and stop something. This really is changing in the business district from a business to a residential property. I have a hard time seeing how this isn't a use variance.
If residential, Madam
Yeah.
Chair, wasn't allowed, I agree with you entirely, but it's allowed. The question is where on the
Second
property
floor.
is it allowed? And so whether we're going horizontally within a setback or vertically, we're just going to a lower floor, the use is allowed in the district. It's allowed on this property. The question is where. And I would submit that because an area variance deals with physical requirements, and just like setbacks, when you're going from your building envelope and you're intruding into a setback, all I'm doing now is taking a residential that's supposed to be second floor and above and going down. And I'm locating it in a different area of the property, and it should be treated frankly no different than a setback variance. And I could come back again to the law on special permit conditions, and case law is clear, special permit conditions can be varied through area variances.
Judd or John, do you have any thoughts you
Well,
want to?
I understand you're asking for a variance and clearly, in our view, a variance is required. You're not on the second floor, you're on the first floor. And that, I think, goes against the concept of a business district. The regulations are there for a reason, because you want a business district.
And I hear you. I would submit that that's a decision for the Board of Trustees to make, right? The Board of Trustees has already legislated that residential uses are permitted in this district subject to conditions. So if the legislative body wants to eliminate residential uses from a business district altogether, then it should eliminate item number 15 under the use regulations of the business district. So your board.
Yeah, I guess my thought, or my read on that, Brad, is that the trustees have made a decision. That's why they wrote a law that permitted it, but not on the first level.
No, I'm in agreement with that,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And I'm against anything that reduces the number of retail spaces on Main Street. I mean, it's important to have as many retail outlets available so that parking turns over, so that there's lots of foot traffic. It's good for all of the vendors on Main Street that we have first floor retail. And taking one away is a detriment to the business district as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I think irregardless of any of our own opinions, I just think this was how the law was written. And I think that you can get a use variance if you can prove to us that you need a use variance, which is just, as you know, different criteria.
Yeah, look, we're gonna go back and
And
forth on this.
obviously
right?
much harder to get. I get that, but
Look, I could take that same position and argue that, look, a setback, right, is you're not allowed to build a house or a deck or a patio within a setback. It's prohibited in that area of a lot. The legislature regulated that, right? The legislative body, the Board of Trustees, established setback requirements. Applicants, property owners are allowed to seek relief from those requirements. Again, I submit in the same way.
but when
policy
people
view-
come to us,
I'm sorry?
when people come to us asking for a setback, what we do is we go to the code
Mhm.
and we interpret it given the way that it was written, whether or not you reach these, but there are very specific requirements, and that's what we go through and make the best decisions that we can. The problem is you need a use variance here, and that's a different set of requirements than an area variance, is my opinion.
Right.
I'm
I mean, I think
Everybody else can vote however they want, but
No,
that's how I see this. And
I agree with you.
I've read everything you've sent us. They're very good arguments. They just don't come down on your side on this one. Yes.
The homeowner has his hand raised.
Okay. Let me just check in with everybody here on the board. If anybody else has anything they want to say before we get to the homeowners and any other members of the public who want to be heard. But we've all so far had our say?
For me, looking at this, it seems like it would be a use variance.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be easier to make a decision based upon a variance on use.
Right.
I'm sorry, Judd, I didn't hear that. It'd be easier to make a decision based on what?
Brad, it would be just clearer for me to make a decision based on a use variance versus an area varies versus going in with the area variance.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem like it's a fit.
Right. You feel like it's a better fit for a use variance. Yeah, I do too. But let's go to comments.
I'll come back and
Anybody
respond after the comments.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Richard, you can speak, you can speak.
Okay. Hi, it's actually Gail Weiler. Rich is here. We're both here. I'm not clear, so, and perhaps I'm missing a nuance, but, our building for about 100 years was residential. We changed it and tried dental, we've explored all those areas and, there doesn't seem to be enough space there for commercial and nobody's interested in taking it as commercial. But also there are no other commercial on our block next door to us. It's almost the same building. They're modeled after brownstones in Manhattan, and they're all residential on the ground floor. Of course, the affordable housing does abut our driveway. Yes, it is the library where it faces Astor Street, but there are apartments, on the driveway that we share. Those are apartments. They're affordable apartments across the street. It's the same thing. It's owned by the restaurant on the corner, by the Salvies, and they have apartments facing Main Street. Around the corner, they do have a restaurant, but, facing Main Street, that's all residential. I know that John
Isn't there an
Malone
art studio on the ground
and I
floor?
think John had 33 examples of residential in that area on the ground floor.
Isn't there an art studio on the ground floor across the street?
It was actually in the basement, but it's gone.
Okay.
We did
Does anybody
try
else?
2 different dentists, specialists, and they just kept coming back saying it's too small a space. And you know how medicine and dentistry is going now. It's all corporate models where you need bigger spaces.
Yeah.
Well, it's the handicap access, but also the dentist that bought the practice brought it to White Plains, a block from White Plains Hospital. He's in that consortium as well. And I think that is the problem, that it's hard for a single practitioner. Richard had bought his father's practice. It was 70 years old, so it was a little different. So.
Right. Brad, do you have anything you want to add on that? Nope, I think you're muted. Sorry.
I'm muted. So look, we're gonna shake out differently on this, right? I hear you on the legislative intent or policy, but I don't think that dictates what kind of variance is required. But we could stop the back and forth. I think we hear where each other's coming from, and we just see it differently. I guess a question I have for you all, do you see, could this board embrace, I understand you can't prejudge or tell us how you would come out, you don't have anything before you, but it's quite a bit of work to submit a use variance application, the dollars and cents evidence. I know you've had those before.
Sure.
So I would like, I think on behalf of my clients, some feedback to this use at this location. You just heard from our clients a little bit. They kind of foreshadowed what the use variance application would look like. Office, we all know, is coming out of COVID is very, very difficult. They've had folks looking at it, other dentist offices have looked at it, and it's not been leasable. So we're happy to go back and with reservation of all rights, come in and submit a use variance application. We just don't want to make, I guess, a totally futile application.
No, I understand and I appreciate, it's a cost sensitive thing. I get it. I can only tell you my opinion, and if anybody else wants to give their opinion, they can, but nobody has to. My opinion is I could see this as a use variance. It's just we need to go through that process and we need to see that this just isn't viable as a commercial space. And therefore you do need to change it into something. I could see that. I just haven't seen that.
Yep.
If you know what I mean. Like I would need to see, I'm not here to ruin anybody's life. If you can't make it work as a commercial space, I could see turning it back into a residential space. I just think we really do need to see that because this is meant to be a business district.
All right, so
And if
we'll
you're
come
gonna
back.
change it, there has to be a good reason, more than what we've been submitted so far, is my opinion. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on that or not, but that's how I see it.
I'm certainly open-minded about it, but I haven't,
Yes.
and we'll consider the facts, right? I mean, I can't go any further than that.
I appreciate, Madam Chair, your candor and transparency. I thank you. And yes, I get it. You can't go further than that. So we will come back and submit the evidence. Look, again, I wasn't here last month. I wanted to come back and have this discussion.
Yeah, no, I think it was a discussion worth having. I agree.
There is no decision on point, right? I'm sure you're all aware there are cases out there, parking over the years, frontage requirements, gasoline distance requirements. So there's been, types of land uses that have been adjudicated as to whether it's a use or area variance. This has not yet. And I wanted to come in and have this dialogue. But hearing where the board is shaking out, we will come back with the use variance application next month.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Brad.
All right. Good night, all.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So we are going to go on to our next case, which is 1 Shady Lane. That's our first new matter tonight. John, are you hanging around? Oh, you're on mute.
But I had so much to say.
Yeah.
I know. So John Malone, First One Architecture, representing the mayor's family. So we are in front of you to modify a variance for a front yard incursion and also position of the building in the front of the house. We're just about to construct this house, and a question came up from both the contractor and the owner about whether it would be possible to rotate the building so that the relationship of the buildings would be at 90-degree angles. So right now, the building is positioned on top of the footprint of the historic building that was there and had that same configuration, which is about 5 degrees off 90 degrees. I can share a screen and show you guys what we're planning to do.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
So here you can see just from the survey the relationship of the old potting shed, which was a historic building that was here, and the house, which is also, relatively old and historic. And there was this 5-degree differential between the two buildings. We originally came with a proposal to leave the building in approximately the same footprint. And on the thing that on the sheet that we submitted to you for this meeting, we've shown that footprint as a dotted line. So the heavy dotted line here, if you can make that out, was the approved. And what we're proposing to do is rotate the building from this corner here to get it into the same, basically make a right angle condition in this courtyard here. The reason we are not rotating it from some other point, like this back corner, which would potentially not have any need for well, still might need to remove variance, but it wouldn't have increased incursion, is there's an existing approximately 100-year-old Japanese maple here that rises up into the hill. And the reason we're okay leaving the building where it was is because it didn't have any root impacts beyond because there was a basement in the building beyond the existing conditions. So if we rotated from this point, we would be basically encroaching in the tree root zone, and we're trying not to do that. And we believe that this rotation doesn't have a significant negative impact, certainly on the neighborhood or on the site or anything like that. So we're here to ask for relief from the front yard incursion. One of the other things to point out about this site is obviously it's a very odd shaped site. The front yard extends all the way along this line here and continues along this line here. You know, typically this is the front of the house here. This would be considered a side yard and would require only a 15-foot setback. But because of this line being continuous, or has been interpreted as a continuous front from this point to this point, when in actuality, the front is here as you approach the building.
Now, John, remind me, what variances did we give you last time?
So there were two variances. One was for this incursion into the front yard, and the other one was the position of an accessory building in front of the main building. So if you consider this.
I'm sorry. So what you're asking for tonight really isn't any different than what we've granted. It's just a little bit of an adjustment in the situation, basically, of the property. Yeah.
Right. That's basically the differential between the dotted line and the dark shaded square is what we're asking.
Okay. Yeah. But it's not an additional variance or anything like that. It's the same two variances. It's just there's been an adjustment to the plans.
And there's been no adjustment to the design otherwise. You know, it hasn't grown or anything.
Right. That's what I thought. Does anybody on the board have any comments? All right. I'm going to make a motion to approve. As I said, it's the same two variances. It's just a slight adjustment in the way they're going to situate that structure. And I think it's pretty minor ask. So I'll make a motion.
I second.
Second. Great. We'll start with you, Judd.
Approve. Yes.
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 Great.
Just want to thank you all so much.
Oh, thank you
Very much. And John, I know you from playing tennis a long time ago.
That's right.
And I don't know if you were the Gardner family that lived at 1 Shady Lane?
No,
Okay.
no.
They lived there.
We're the Watsons.
Okay.
Over on 35 Station Road. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
We're so happy that to make it even more historic and beautiful for us. But thank you.
Excellent. Thank
John.
you.
Thanks, Mark.
Great. Okay. So, John, I'll send you a letter
Thank
by
you.
the end of the week, but
Have a good
that
night,
is.
guys.
Now, the next case is the Hogans. Chris and Kim at 2 Roland Road.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Great.
Excellent.
Matthew Behrens. I am the architect for the Hogan residence, 2 Roland Road, representing this application. We are applying for a variance for allowable building coverage. This is a legalization of an existing pool patio that exceeds the allowable coverage. This was uncovered a few months ago when the Hogans set out to expand their driveway. And at that time, it was discovered that they were exceeding had already exceeded the allowable coverage from the previous owners, but also because the patio that had been approved was expanded and not documented. So I will share my screen, pull up.
Matt, before you do that, so are they submitting another plan for the driveway expansion?
It's part of the same application. The driveway does not require an increase in coverage. It doesn't count as coverage. It is impervious surface, so we are dealing with drainage and the runoff for that separately with the planning board. But the increase or the expansion of the driveway doesn't require any variances because it doesn't count as an increase in coverage.
Let me just ask you before you get too
Sure.
far in. So the existing pool patio was expanded
Correct.
without documentation.
Correct.
by-
And off the top of my head, I think it was about 600 something, 650. I'm just gonna kind of paraphrase.
Sure.
650 square feet was submitted and approved, and about 1,000 square feet was constructed. So it's about a 400-foot undocumented increase
By the homeowners,
by the previous homeowners. Correct.
by the previous homeowners. So not, okay,
Correct.
got
This predates the current owners.
it. Gotcha. That's what I was getting at. Thank you.
I will share my screen. Before I jump into that. So just a quick view here. Oops, I'm sorry. Let me know if you can see that. It's basically the aerial view. So you can see Roland Road. This is the subject property. The property extends all the way to Broadway. You can see a little glimpse of the pool here and the surrounding neighborhoods, the surrounding neighboring properties. This is a view of that patio in question. You can see it's really not a very big patio. It is, about 6 feet around the edge of the pool. And then the reason why they extended it, which I'll show in a second, is just to connect it to the house without having to walk on the grass. Now you can step off, there's a small porch. You can step off the porch and then right onto the patio. So that was the reason why they extended it. We think.
Okay.
Which you can see here, this dashed line here represents the approved patio, and then this solid line here is what was constructed. You can see what I was saying before, how it connects to the to this covered porch here. And then this is the expansion of the driveway. Why they built it this way, I'll never know. But right now you come in, the garage is over here, and basically the parking area is on this side of the house, but the entrance is here. So you basically have to come in and go all the way around this way. This will give them an opportunity to just kind of come in and out a little bit easier. It is a little bit, it's a little tight when you come in and make this left coming off of Roland Road. So it's a little bit windy. I wouldn't say it's unsafe, but it's certainly something that's inconvenient.
Okay. So where are you on coverage as the property stands right now?
Let me jump to that. So right now, the required is 12% and the existing is 13%. With this additional 460 square foot of undocumented increase to the patio, we go up to 15%. And you can see it graphically here. This crosshatch is what was approved, and the double crosshatch is the expanded piece. It is, again, I don't want to be casual about it, but it's only a 460-foot increase on a rather large lot. So the coverage calculations you can see.
So you would be, if this were granted, it would be about 15% over allowable?
It's 15% of the coverage. So in other words, the allowable
so
is 12%. It's 15. It equates to 15% of the coverage.
Of the coverage, got it.
3% over the allowable.
So it's 25%.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yes. And here's how it breaks down. Again, it's a good sized lot. It's over 40,000 square feet in an F40 zone. The bonus, only gives us 16%, 116 square feet. So it's not a big increase due to the bonus, even though it is an oversized lot. And the existing currently, without the undocumented piece, is over 6,000. So again, this is a condition that has been here since from the documentation we were able to get from the building department. It's been like this since 2008. It hasn't had any adverse effect on the neighbors or on the property. And I can quickly just take a quick look, if you don't mind, to the comparative analysis. So you can see of the 12 lots that we surveyed, 11 of them are non-conforming. And of those 12, 5 exceed the requested variances, and one of them is basically equivalent. So of the 12, 6 of them are over what we are requesting.
So in fact, this schedule shows that you're at 134% of allowed,
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
Which shockingly to me still puts you in the bottom half of the houses that you have on this schedule.
Yeah,
Maybe even in the bottom third.
Right. If you look at the average is 143%
Right.
percent of the allowed and 17% of the lot, and we're at 16. And again, I'll just
from 124% of allowed to 134% of allowed, but it's still, in my opinion, consistent with the character of the neighborhood.
correct. And if we just take another look at this overhead, you can see, the property does not look overdeveloped. This whole section here, west of the pool, the Broadway buffer is over 100 feet. It's not an overdeveloped lot. I don't think anyone would ever consider it that. The house is big, but it sits nicely on the lot. The house just to the north of it here on Roland Road is a big house that dominates the lot. Whereas this whole section here that my cursor is on is really undeveloped. It's well buffered between the properties to the south and the properties to the east here. And then again, the Broadway buffer and the stone wall on Broadway. It's well protected and well buffered.
Any other comments? John?
No, not really. I understand what you want to do, and I think I'm sympathetic to it, but what happens when we grant this is that if we grant this, then the average overage goes up in the neighborhood. So when somebody new comes in, they will be working with a higher average. And if we grant that, then the average will go up. See what I mean? It just goes up and up and up.
Well, that's why we should use medians rather than average.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Well, that's what you're saying is that it's in the lower.
It's under the median.
It's under
right?
the median. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. All right. Well, if there are no other comments, I will make a motion. The numbers are high and I don't love that. And we always hate legalizing things that have been done illegally, but it was a previous owner. And as Charlie noted, it is in the bottom sort of third of that neighborhood in terms of overage. And for those reasons, I'm going to make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. John?
Yes.
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 Alrighty, you're approved and I will send you a letter by the end of the week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
You too. Thank you. Okay, the next house is 61 Field Terrace.
Good evening, folks.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. My name is Mike Jacobs. I'm an architect with Jacobs Chang Architecture, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the owners at 61 Field Terrace. We've been in front of the planning board, and we were referred here to the zoning board for consideration of really two zoning variances. One is exceeding the development coverage for the property, and a second variance consideration for parking in the front yard setback. And so if you will indulge me, I'm going to just run through a few slides to give you a little bit of context with what we're doing. and hopefully,
That'd be great. Thank
hopefully
you.
shed some light on it. Okay, everybody can see that, I assume?
Yes.
Okay. So just a little bit of background. We have an active construction permit that's been approved for this property. It was approved about 1.5 years ago, and the scope of work in that approved permit is essentially an interior renovation to the existing house, and a good portion of that work includes upgrades to the building envelope, so a more healthy insulation building envelope, and new thermal sort of higher level thermal windows for the house. And so much of that work, or all, I would say 90+% of that work was approved for interior work. And as we're kind of nearing sort of the tail end of the construction, we've started to think about how some of those interior rooms of the house could begin to engage the outside in a more, maybe a more thoughtful way and maybe a more sensitive way. So 61 Field Terrace, as most of you probably already know, is up on the east side of Broadway, up towards the top of the hill, or top of one of the hills. 61 Field is in a neighborhood of houses. From the tax map, you can see a little bit that it's a property that's very, what I would say, typical or average for this neighborhood. There's some properties that are a bit more modest, of course, and some that are much more generous or expansive. But I think for the most part, 61 Field feels like it's very compatible with the neighborhood. This is a survey from 2021 when we began this work, and what this tells us or shows us is this one-story portion of the house, which is sort of in the middle of the site, and the circular driveway, which is part of the original house. That was all built in 1971, which is when the initial house was built. And then in the 1990s, this sort of eastern portion of the house is a two-story house, sunken down towards the grade drops down here, so it's a little bit of like a split level. And this driveway here was added to garage at the lower level, and that was done in the early 1990s. The property is accessed on a shared driveway, and we come in off Field Terrace, roughly 200 feet, and then the driveway splits to 3 different points. So 61 Field, this is the western edge of that sort of shared driveway, or eastern edge of that shared driveway. 61 Field is here. It branches off to the house to the south here. And then as we drop down, again, that's the house to the south. And then as we kind of look back towards the west, the northwest, this is the house that fronts, or the side of the house fronts 61 Field Terrace street. And this is where the driveway branches off and becomes comes off of the shared driveway. And so again, we have this approval for some work. Some of the approval that we got previously or received previously included not just the interior work, but the removal of a portion of the asphalted driveway. So we can see just from this picture here, this diagram, the pink area represents what is the driveway or asphalted area on the property. We recognize, of course, that driveways and development coverage are irrelevant together, but I think it's important in the context of what we're trying to maybe put forward tonight that there is some context to this this request. So the current driveway before any work done on the property, it was just about 6,500 square feet of asphalt. In that initial proposal, we had requested and were approved for the removal of a portion of the circular driveway and the connector piece that brought cars down to an old garage, which is now interior space. And so this left a kind of a space of asphalt on the southeast corner of the property for, let's say, ball sports or outdoor sports activities, and also a place to pull a car in, still with a carport and a small parking area in the front. And that was removing about almost 2,400 square feet of asphalt. And so this is graphically what that currently would look like if we carry out those plans in blue, and that would be the asphalted areas. What we're requesting tonight is a little bit of a change or a deviation from that. We are requesting one to, again, remove this portion that was previously sort of understood to maybe be a recreational space, basketball, bikes, that sort of thing, and to expand this area here further into the front yard for parking. And of course, one of the things that we recognize is the asphalted areas of the property become development coverage when they're not driveway. And so what was previously all driveway, almost 7,000 square feet of driveway, is now reduced to kind of just this area, which is totally adequate, and also some overflow parking for the front yard. And one of the reasons we're asking, well, we'll come back to the front yard parking in a moment. I just want to kind of talk about development coverage. So that's the history of where we've been. This is kind of just a diagram of what we're asking for. The pink represents what's currently approved, and the blue was the expanded area. Again, just looking north, same idea. One of the requests that came up in the planning board hearings, this is a picture facing west from that front yard, so towards the neighbor to the west. There's a large arborvitae hedge, and the parking that we're requesting would be here in the foreground of this image and right around here in the background of this image. And the request was to add some additional landscaping and screening to, in case somebody decides to cut these down on the neighbor's property, that there would be no sort of, I guess, undue influence of car headlights or something like that. So we have sort of agreed to that. So there'd be some planting in here that was approved by the landscape consultant. And then as we look north from that sort of proposed parking area, we see the neighboring properties quite a bit away. The house is not anywhere near this portion of their property. And there's already kind of a pretty heavily planted area that would be maintained along the north edge of the property.
So what in this, so that in the where you want coverage from us,
yep,
what sort of material are we talking about?
Yeah, I'm going to get to that in one moment. I'm so sorry. I'll try and move quickly. Thank you. I just want to kind of, this is the back area of the property, the area that we'd like to remove and return to landscape. Again, towards this. So a second component, aside from the front yard parking area and the removal of this back area of asphalt, we are proposing a seating area up on the north end of the property with two little pathways in stone pavers on the ground that would take us from like the kitchen area and the living room area out to a kind of a clearing that's already existing out on the north corner of the property, or this upper part of the property, where we might have a dining table and a little area for outdoor seating. It's a really beautiful spot on the property. You can kind of look east into a tree line where the land drops off, and you can look west out towards the horizon on a nice sunset day. The material on the ground there, we're proposing pea gravel coverage. So again, we understand that it's development coverage, and we understand that it counts, but certainly in the spirit of development coverage intentions and of course the Irvington Comprehensive Plan, which really tries to encourage the development of impermeable, sort of permeable ground versus impermeable ground. The pea gravel will be permeable to allow water and rain to recharge back into the ground in our aquifers. So we sort of support that idea. This is part of the development coverage calculation, however. This is kind of the area of the property where we would be. And the third and last component is a open slat wood deck off of the lower level basement space. The basement space is being transformed into a rec room and an exercise room, and that would sort of spill out onto a raised deck here. It's roughly 24-ish inches off the ground, so very low profile. It's also tucked away outside of the view of any neighbors, and that again, not in Irvington, but in many places, open slat decking is not considered development coverage because it does allow water and stormwater to recharge back into the ground. We understand that, of course, does count in this case towards our development coverage. And this is where that area might be.
Okay.
And then just to revisit the question of the reduction of paved areas, just the driveway alone, which is really the areas in question, once we tally it all up, we're really reducing, we're proposing to reduce the driveway and asphalted areas by roughly 50%, or just over 3,000 square feet, which in my opinion, not insignificant. And so I wanted to just talk for a moment about the development coverage table. We are asking for 58% overage. That is not small. And I think when we see that number, maybe the reaction is, wow, that's a lot. I think it's important also to recognize that before any work was done at all, not even including the driveway, we're at almost 50% over the coverage. And so clearly the house was developed and built before the current development codes were in place, as is the case with many properties all over the village. What we're requesting here is roughly 10% addition to what is already there. But I think what maybe the silver lining in this, and perhaps you might agree, is that we're also reducing a very largely significant portion of paved area and impervious ground on this property. And then just to jump to the second point in question tonight, which is a variance for front yard parking. This area here is proposed for parking. We have carport parking here, which, you know, this shows two cars. I think the reality is one large car would fit in there comfortably. Two large cars, maybe not, but maybe two small cars would. But we need to remember also that this is a flag lot, and for guests to arrive at the property, there is really no other place conveniently to park other than to park on the property. So currently, the property has adequate driveway for parking. We have the big circle, we have the side driveway, but we want to get rid of a lot of that stuff. And instead, really just kind of maintain additional overflow parking here. And that might be for parents, guests, friends, anybody that comes to the property, deliveries, that sort of thing, to come in, turn around and go. Otherwise, people are parking on Field Terrace, which is quite a narrow hillside street, not easy to park on. And then it's another, 200 plus feet to walk to the front door of the house. So not super convenient.
That proposed parking area, what kind of material would that be?
Yes, that would just be asphalt, just like the driveway. That's what we're proposing. So it would just be this blue area here. What you're seeing would be.
So you don't need, from us, you don't need a coverage variance for that piece, but you do need the parking in the front yard
Correct.
setback, right? Okay.
Yeah,
So
this line here is our front yard setback.
Parking spots counted in coverage.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
I was thinking of it more as a driveway,
But it's
you're
not.
right.
It's not. It's a parking area.
So is that part of your coverage calculation, that
Yes.
spot?
Yes, it is.
It is. Okay.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
part of
all
that
that.
58%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
I've got two more slides. Just indulge me, please. One thing just to recognize, again, this is the general line of the shared driveway to get to these three properties. We'll see, and we can see here the context, right? So this is that shared driveway. This is front yard parking. And of course, as we pull into the neighboring property to the south, this also is front yard parking. And so I think there is, in my opinion, a clear need or convenience to parking on these properties, particularly the flag lots, which are a little bit more difficult to reach. And as we all probably know, flag lots, the idea of traditional sort of recognizing traditional front yards is really not part of how we see flag lots in general or how we experience them. It's just the arrival point on the property. So I suppose that is maybe the basis for the arrival point here, and really trying to reduce and really minimize the asphalted components of the property.
So Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but parking is not a problem in the old configuration, right?
That's right. We have, we have more than enough asphalted areas to park.
Right.
Well, it looks like just existing circular driveways, a lot of parking there.
Right.
Correct. And I think currently this entire space here is still driveway and asphalt. So I suppose there's more parking for whatever that need might be. I think the owners currently have one car. They don't necessarily need a ton of parking, but they do have a babysitter that comes and that person drives, and guests who come drive, and parents and relatives and that sort of thing. So there is, I think, a need for additional cars outside of the carport on this property. It's a little bit of a unique condition. It's not right on the street.
Yeah. So there's definitely a lot going on here, but the fact that you're going from 148% of allowed to 158% of allowed is disconcerting to me.
And I guess I would add to that the fact that it really isn't in conformity with the rest of the neighborhood. I mean, that would put you from, high to very high for this neighborhood.
Right.
I guess that's where my concern with this. I mean, I'm all for reducing asphalt whenever you can, but that's not really something that
It's under our control.
that is under
No,
our
yeah.
control.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe, I don't even know, I'd have to think about this, but if it was just the parking, we could think about it, but you're adding an awful lot of coverage to what is already a very full piece of property, and even does look that way. I mean, it's not just numbers. Do you know what I mean? Like it feels like a very somewhat overbuilt piece of
Filling up a
property.
lot a little.
Yeah.
Mike, could you go over the numbers? I'm just for the minutes here, the coverage is now, what the proposed is.
You're talking about this chart?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah,
Right.
thank
Yeah,
you.
so this line here is what's existing on the property, and right now we have 11% allowable.
What? Okay, so my eyes. So 4,977 is allowable.
Correct.
Okay.
In the existing, and not that it's your concern or my concern, but having a 1-story house on the property is different than having a 2.5-story house. Of course, the owners bought it with that, and of course, that's neither here nor there. But I think it does contribute to maybe the skewed reading of the coverage that the existing coverage on the land. That of course, these development codes. Yeah,
I don't think it actually is a skewed reading. It's just a different way of using the property that happens
I
to
would
take
agree.
up coverage. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just say that's maybe why
A
it
similarly
looks
sized house, but if it was vertical, it would take less coverage. Right.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's 157 obviously is 57, I think it is, that's way over coverage.
Right.
And then yours is the second, and everything else is, within a pretty reasonable. I mean, there's 125%, and then we're talking 2%, 3%, 8%, and you want to go from 48 to 58. That's a lot.
Okay.
And it's a lot for this neighborhood. I can't say that it conforms to the neighborhood.
I agree with that.
That's my feeling. Yeah,
agree with
yeah. Does anybody else have any comments or?
No, I have the same feeling. I was trying to figure out, I was actually up there today. They're building all over the place. I tried to get them to explain to me where things were, and they didn't know. The
Right, yeah,
builders
yeah,
didn't know, obviously.
yeah. No,
I don't
mean,
think the carpenters
have
know the
the
full scope.
diagram.
Yeah.
right. I think my suggestion would be that we adjourn this and maybe have a little think about what you really need and how you really want to use this property, and if there are ways to reduce the ask. I just think it's just too far over on the coverage, and like I said, it even feels like it's too far over the coverage. That would be my advice, or I could make a motion and we could vote on it, but I don't know that it would go your way, so I might go back
I
to
appreciate that. I mean, I think we do struggle with this question of how do we try to provide outdoor space that feels much more connected to the interior of the house. I think hopefully we all sort of aspire to something like that in the lifestyles that we live. But I understand the challenge. I understand the precedent that is challenging. I'd be happy to walk anybody, the entire board for that matter, around the property and talk about this a little bit more. Maybe we can come up with a solution that feels, compatible to what your job is and certainly what the desires are for the homeowners.
Mike, I've got an ask. Can you just kind of go over like the slab deck in the back, like how many square feet that is, just so I
of course.
just kind of see like that.
You're catching me a little off guard. Let me just zoom in. I hope we have it written here. If not, I can look it up. But I can give you dimensionally what we're hoping for. Yeah, 1 sec here. Sorry, it's a big file. 1 sec. Okay. This rectangle is the result of extending the 2 rooms that are kind of coming out towards the back of the house. One is here, which is the rec room, and it kind of comes out through a sliding door, and then sort of you can drop down into the landscape. So you go from deck to ground. And this portion here is off an exercise room. Part of the intention there is
we can't see what you're pointing to.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Let me see if this works a little bit better. Okay.
Just need to see where your cursor is moving.
Yeah, I think sometimes it stalls. So is this a little bit more clear?
It's bigger for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't necessarily.
I'll do my best. This portion here is a 1-story kind of rec room that's down below, and it opens up onto a very kind of modest little walkway that brings us down to the ground. So it's just a transition that brings us down. This portion here is really conceived of as more of a deck that perhaps yoga mats can be rolled out on.
Yeah, it's we're not picking up on the cursor for some reason. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Do you know, that's okay. Do you want to just describe what part of the house you're talking about?
So the eastern side of the house, where before the property drops off behind a fence line and a retaining wall, we're proposing a raised wood deck. So it says new open slat wood decking over gravel on grade. That's really conceived of as kind of like a space for exercise, and it's tucked away in the back of the property. We felt like it was a really, I don't know, beautiful spot to be. And it's sized for a small class of yoga on the deck.
And how many square feet is that?
Square footage, I can come back to you on that because I have it, but the dimensions are roughly it's 17 feet from here, so roughly about 14 to 15 feet side to side or east to west on this plan. And then we have 48 overall, but really the space outside here is probably closer to 30 feet. So 30 by 15-ish.
Okay. Well, look, I think my recommendation stands.
Okay.
Do you want to go back to your clients and talk about this a little bit and maybe have another think on it and see if there's some amount of coverage you could live without?
Okay.
I just think that I appreciate you taking the time to walk us through this, but my gut feeling and as to how I would make a proposal is that this is just too much coverage for this piece of property. And I think I wouldn't love you to get voted down right away without having a second bite at the apple.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Is there any comments that you guys would like to offer in terms of the proposed seating area? Right now, we're proposing what I would consider, most places would consider not developing coverage, but of course we're in Irvington, so that's a little different.
I know, and you know, the code is all I can say about that.
I guess for me, it's just this to know how many square feet that proposed area is.
Okay.
Because that's what I'm getting. Like, you know, the deck is, 450 square feet. The proposed seating area is square feet,
Yeah.
And then that way we can kind of see where it all is, how it's adding up.
Yes, and I do have that information. It's in the drawings that we provided. I just
It's there.
It's there.
All right.
Yeah.
I am jumping around a little bit, so I apologize.
Mike, it's okay.
Okay.
It's a numbers problem for me.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a numbers, right? So you need to figure out how you can make that number smaller and satisfy your client and satisfy us, right?
Okay.
I mean,
I think that's a fair enough request. Thank you. front yard parking, should we just come back next time and talk about it all again?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, and we will see you next month.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the last case of the night is 255 Mountain. Racanelli.
This is where the castles used to live.
Yes, it is. Yes, absolutely. I was gonna say it was, but yeah, exactly.
Right.
Hello.
Hi, good evening. Jim Anacarico with Cronin Engineering, representing Maria Racanelli and family in this request, I guess, for an extension of a previously granted site capacity variance for 3 lots. And this time, I guess, which wasn't required for some reason that unknown to me at the last go around. Now a lot with variance as well.
Good evening. I'm Whitney Singleton, attorney for the applicant as well.
So let me ask you, so this, we've seen this property more than once. So remind me, when was the last time, when was this, you said these 3 variances were granted?
So the, I guess before your board, back in March of 2007, your board at that time granted a variance for the site capacity where 2.88 calculated out. And it was requested, there was a request for 3 lots that was granted. That was then extended in 2012 as well. And then the planning board in October of, planning board in April of 2012 finally, well, I guess I should say the applicant at that time finally got around to getting through to the planning board what they needed, what they were looking for. And in April of 2012, a conditional final subdivision approval was granted by the planning board.
Planning board, okay. And so now you're coming to us for essentially an extension of what was decided originally in March of 2007, right?
Correct.
But what's the difference? There's something additional here.
There is no difference with the site capacity request.
Site capacity, okay.
The only difference this time is we were told by the planning board that we now need a lot width variance. And again,
lot width
yeah,
variance, okay. Got it. That's what feels different to me. Okay.
Well, I don't think the lot width has not changed. It's just been identified as an additional variance that's needed.
That's correct. So this subdivision was approved as a cluster subdivision.
Okay.
As you know, back then, this just for some history, this was done through my office back then. Unfortunately, I wasn't the one working on it, and people who were working on it at that time weren't here anymore. So I don't know all the history. I've figured out what I can figure out, but we proved out 3 lots, as you have to with a cluster subdivision. And at that time, we obviously, but however, the calculation for site capacity yielded 2.88 lots, and we came to the zoning board and that was granted. Again, I'm not sure why the lot width variance wasn't flagged at that time, or why it wasn't told that we needed it. Maybe, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
It
Well,
may
so
have
talk to
been-
me about talk to me about the lot width then.
Sure. So, we are asking, or we're asking for a lot width variance of 52.8 feet, where 100 is required. And that is
I think-
essentially the distance
Jim?
at the frontage of the lot. As you know.
Jim, I think the lot width for lot number 2 is 52.8, and you're required to have 100.
Correct.
So it's the variance request is in the 40s. It's less than 50%.
Right, yeah, so that's what you said. And so it's just for lot 2, or do lot 1 and lot 3 need a width variance as well?
They do not.
They do not, so it's just.
Lot
for 2.
lot 1 is
200 and something.
yeah, 211.5 feet. And lot 3 is 119.5 feet. So
Okay.
my thought that, maybe at that time they thought that was one of the items they could vary, the planning board. I don't know, but
Right. This has been kicking around for a long time now, so
it has
it's
been, yes.
hard to know.
Would you like us to put up the plan so that you can see visually what we're talking
Yeah,
about?
that would be great.
Sure.
Jim, you
Yes.
want to do it or you want me to do it? I don't care.
I can do it.
Okay.
Actually, Whitney, why don't you do it? Because I've had some problems when I try to share on Zoom. I don't
Okay.
know.
Not a problem. Can you see it all right?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, essentially, as Jim kind of alluded to, we have plenty of frontage along the road. There's 200 and something feet here. There's 120 feet here. It's this frontage that is non-compliant. And the reason that we're requesting the variance is because this whole thing's been driven by this conservation or cluster subdivision to protect a lot of the property and to work around the existing structures. If we were to take more of the land from the 2 new proposed lots, it would reduce those lots, and we've already agreed with the town through declaration of covenants, easements, and restrictions, as well as a conservation easement that's going to be granted to the town. We've agreed that virtually nothing on lot number 2 is going to change, and that we've further agreed to reduce building coverage for lots 1 and 2. So we're not entitled to the building coverage that would be applied by the code for the actual size of those lots. We've agreed to smaller footprints. And so this existing drive, which will be widened, I guess, a little bit, but this existing drive is going to continue to serve the house in the back. And there's restrictions on the house in the back that nothing can be taken down, nothing can be modified. If there's any destruction to any of those structures, we have to rebuild them in the format and architectural style that exists. So it's all really being driven to protect lot number 2 in the back. So while it does have less than the required frontage, it's being done in an effort to maintain the character of the existing property. And it is consistent, like you can see even here, just to the property to the left here, they have diminished frontage, but they may have pre-existed. I don't know. So I shouldn't cite that as a comparison, but I think it's entirely consistent with the character of the neighborhood. And especially since the main house here on lot number 2 is set back from the road.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions or any comments? Okay, well, I was not here in 2007 when this all started. I was here in 2012, so I remember that we extended you back then. This isn't really a change to the plan. I guess for some reason it wasn't picked up that you needed a width variance, and that's really the only difference. But there's no other real change. So I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Judd?
Yes.
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 All righty. You are approved, and I will send you a letter by the end of the week.
Okay, can I, Chairman, can I ask you a question? I saw Brad was
Sure.
on the beginning of your meeting. But I
Yes.
had to step away from the camera for a second. What did you ultimately do with that application?
They are going to, I think, come to us for a use variance
Okay,
as opposed to an area variance,
yeah,
which is what
I've had that same issue with Brad in another municipality. It's not, it's a very awkward issue.
it is an
But
awkward issue.
all you have to do is look at New York City. They don't
Yeah.
let you, they don't let you
Yep.
convert commercial space on the ground floor to residential because you want to, but, okay. I mean, Brad's terrific. He's always very polite and everything else, but it's amazing how many times that issues come up, that I've had that issue with Brad in numerous towns.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. As I said, I will be sending you a letter and you're good to go.
Okay,
And
thank you
so-
very much.
That's all we have before us tonight. So I think we can adjourn.
Good
Great.
night.
Good.